Thank you so much for coming. We're speaking with Deanna Won, retired colonel of the U.S. Air Force. Can you tell us, Deanna, was anyone in your family a military member that inspired you to serve?
Yes, both my father and my brother were in the military. My father, he's also a retired colonel, and he flew fighters back during the Korean War. And then my brother was a helicopter pilot. He started out in the Marines and went into the Navy later.
Did you always want to serve in the military as a result of your family members serving, or is this something that kind of happened on its own?
When I was growing up, I actually wanted to be a gymnast, a ballerina, or a pianist. And when I talked to my parents about that as a little girl, they said, well, you can't really make a living like that. And so before I knew it, I applied to go to the Air Force Academy for college, and that's what led me to go into the Air Force.
So what would you say is your favorite assignment?
I would say probably my time in Turkey as the Deputy Group Commander was my favorite assignment. Mm-hmm. I feel like I just have a natural gift in just dealing with people from different cultures. And so I really enjoyed working with the Turkish community there. We did a lot of joint exercises together, and the whole experience was it was a career broadening assignment, and so I felt like I was able to learn and also contribute to some of the support that we were given to U.S. troops that were assigned to NATO there. So that was when we were involved with the NATO training mission in Iraq, as well as in Afghanistan and in the Sudan as well.
So how would you say that those experiences reinforced where you are and who you are, or instilled those qualities within you to be the business owner that you are today?
I feel that when you're in a different country, you have to keep an open mind to try to learn as much as you can, and just to be open to changing your perspective. And I feel that as a business owner, it's the same types of skills, because having been in the military, we basically are given our mission. But then as a business owner, I'm trying to identify, well, what's the need out there? Mm-hmm. And so I start to talk to a lot of people, and I just listen with an open mind and try to learn as much as I can.
So how did you make that transition from boots to heels, or a transition from military to civilian life or entrepreneurship?
Well, that's an interesting story, because I almost did not live to see my retirement. Basically, when I was at my last assignment, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. And I still, just remember it very vividly in my mind. I made the decision to try to heal naturally and holistically, because I realized that even on a morphine IV, it did nothing to reduce my pain. Mm-hmm. And within 3 months of making that change to my diet and nutrition, I noticed that my elevated tumor markers came back to normal. And not only that, but the tumor, which was on my left ovary, actually began to shrink. Mm. And so I kept this up, and 10 months into this, I get tested and find that the tumor is actually starting to die from the inside out. And so I naively assumed at that point that, oh, everything is under control. And I went back to working my 16 to 18-hour days in the military, and went travel, TDY, on business overseas to Asia, to the Philippines and Korea, where I could not maintain that diet and regimen. And I can still remember the night that I landed back from Korea, I hemorrhaged, and I could see the bruising on my abdomen, and I started to hemorrhage just right on a regular basis every 2 weeks. And it seemed as if I crossed a point of no return, because then my tumor started to grow aggressively. My tumor markers that were normal just became extremely elevated. And within about 6 months after that, my lungs collapsed, filled with fluid, and my doctors lost hope for my survival at that point, and they placed me under hospice care on oxygen, and my oncologist gave me 1 to 2 months to live. And when I was in that state, you know, I started reflecting back on my time in the military. It was about 26 years, and I just thought, wow, you know, I gave the best part of my life to the Air Force, and it was with pleasure to serve our country. But then I felt like, wow, now I'm not even going to be able to live to see my retirement. But, you know, and so they were preparing me to die, trying to give me morphine to control the pain. One day, my blood pressure took a huge dip, and all the muscles in my body began to contract, and I felt like that was near the end of my life, because I went for close to 40 days without being able to eat anything solid, and even drinking fluids was extremely painful. And now, you know, with my breath challenge as it was, I just knew it was a matter of time. And so when my blood pressure took a dip like that, I just wanted to see if there was just one last chance that the medical community could perhaps help me. So I, you know, was taken by ambulance to a hospital, and they drew a lot of fluid out of my abdomen, and then they admitted me, and my oncologist wanted me to start chemotherapy right away. And he said he would give me 2 days to think about it. Well, during those 2 days, I prayed, and I just said to God, you know, if you want me to do chemo, I will, but, you know, you're going to have to tell me directly, because as a scientist, I know how detrimental chemo is on the immune system. And so what came back to me was, well, you know, they just took that fluid out of your abdomen. Why don't you ask for the cytology report? And so I did. The next day, I asked the doctor for it, and he refused. He said, you know, your condition is so poor, you've got 1 to 2 months left to live. If you don't do the chemo, I'm going to put you right back into hospice, where you are most certainly going to die. And I pushed back, you know, because of what I had heard in my prayers. And finally, he agreed. And he came back to me 2 days later, and he said, you know, your intuition to wait for this report was a good one, because it came back negative for cancer cells. That was a shock to all the doctors. It was certainly a surprise for me. And so he says, now this opens up the opportunity for you to have surgery. And so I agreed to that and had to get transferred to another hospital. You know, it was just a very long process, because my blood levels were low, and they weren't sure I was even strong enough to undergo a major surgery. I had to go through 5 blood transfusions. But I came through that and went through 3 months of intensive rehabilitation. And that's what gave me the passion to actually start my business, because I realized that there was a lot of research and a lot that I learned through being confronted with my own mortality. And I started my business mainly to try to give hope to people who are dealing with chronic health issues, and to just educate people that there are alternative methods to healing, you know, in conjunction with conventional medical treatment.
And what is the name of your business?
I called it Keynotes to Life, and there's a story behind that, because you know, I mentioned to you earlier that as a little girl I wanted to be a pianist, so the music theme is in there with the keynotes. And I'm also a speaker, you know, that ties into keynote speeches. So, so I basically do inspirational speaking, as well as health coaching, where I help people, you know, one-on-one with whatever challenges they might be facing.
That is quite a remarkable story. So I won't ask you what makes it unique, because your testimony in and of itself makes it unique. And you are a walking billboard for answered prayer. And so the keys to your success, how would you say that your journey has made you successful? What do you offer as keys to success for your business?
I would say just having a desire to learn, a desire to seek the truth in all things, because sometimes we may get used to certain systems and ways of doing things, and I think we need to learn, that there might be other ways of doing things. That was certainly my own journey. There were many things I learned. I actually had to learn how to let go, and the first let go that I had to learn was to let go of my career. That's what actually, just my desire to serve and, the duty that they instill in us as military officers, and, we're always just pushing for the mission to try to take care of the people. And I did not take care of myself in the process. And so I had to learn to let go, and to realize that my identity was not wrapped around my career, that there was much more to life and my purpose here, in this life. And I also had to learn how to let go of my way of thinking, because, as a scientist, it's very easy for me to just get very analytical about things. But at a certain point, I had to realize that, something had to be done, or I would not be here on this earth much longer. Just realizing that I did everything I knew how to do, and I would have to, just yield myself to, what was God's will in all of this. And the final let go that I learned was to let go of life itself, because I needed to have that peace in order to go into the surgery, because, we have fear that just creates stress and all these biochemical changes in the body, which really don't help our immune system. And so, ironically, I just had to learn how to let go of life and just trust that God had my life in His hands, and that even if my physical body, were no longer here, I believe my spirit would continue to live.
That is quite remarkable, to hear your story and your keys to success. I think all of us can benefit from that. When you go out into the community, do you have a way that you give back? Do you do like health fairs or different types of events that are work in conjunction with your business to bring about awareness for those who can't necessarily come into the business, but do you go out to them?
Yes, I speak at churches, and I'll do demonstrations to show people how to juice wheatgrass or green vegetable juice or green smoothies. I also volunteer my time. I speak at different universities and medical schools to the medical students to let them know some of the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, which can be very subtle and vague symptoms. They're bloating and just feeling full, and they can be associated with other medical issues, and so oftentimes a woman won't even realize what some of these symptoms could indicate.
So as we close, my final question to you is, what advice do you have for aspiring entrepreneurs?
I would say the most important thing is to identify what your passion is and to truly listen to your heart, because that will give you the motivation to keep going, when you encounter challenges, as you will in starting up any business.
Deanna Won, we thank you so much for being here, and thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you for having me.